All right. Now, before we do anything else, let's talk about the playing politics with coronavirus that is now starting to kick in. In the United States, Donald Trump gave a press conference today in his usual style. He let the experts speak and then he spoke about, the need for personal hygiene, all the rest of it. But immediately the Democrats decided to pounce because Russia didn't work. The Bill Barr stuff didn't work. The Mueller probe didn't work. The impeachment didn't work. So now coronavirus will work. And in part, of course, it's working because as it starts to pull back the stock market, they can now secretly hope for that recession that they've been looking for. Have a look.
The number one priority from our standpoint is the health and safety of the American people.
President Trump, along with members of his coronavirus task force, addressing the spread of the pathogen. On Tuesday, the Centers for Disease Control warning people to prepare for the inevitable spread of COVID-19 in the United States.
Our aggressive containment strategy here in the United States has been working. However, we do expect more cases.
A warning President Trump doesn't agree with.
No, I don't think it's inevitable.
Vice President Mike Pence will lead the federal coronavirus response.
We will continue to bring the full resources of the federal government in coordination with our state and local partners.
Initially, the Trump administration asked Congress for $2.5 billion to help combat coronavirus. But lawmakers on both sides said that number was too low. The president now says he'll spend whatever amount is appropriate.
If they want to give us more money, that's okay. We'll take more money.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said he wants closer to $4 billion, while Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer proposed $8.5 billion.
Ka-ching, ka-ching. And one more time, people need to see this. National Security Committee of Cabinet meeting today. 7 times it's interrupted because of smart-ass tactics from the opposition who knew they were meeting to talk about coronavirus. One more time from the PM.
We asked the opposition whether pairs could be provided for myself, the Health Minister, other House members of the National Security Committee, which meant that we'd be able to undertake that meeting uninterrupted. Sadly, that request was declined by the opposition and they proceeded to go about their business, which resulted in 7 interruptions to that meeting today. At a time we were trying to plan for the impact of a global pandemic on the coronavirus, well, they chose politics.
Michael, I get it. Oppositions will always make the most of a situation, but fair dinkum, when we're talking about a potential global pandemic and one that may well end up killing an Australian, you would think that we're not going to, we'll give a pair at the very least, and if we knew that they wouldn't get a pair, you wouldn't try to interrupt the meeting 7 times.
Could you imagine Bob Hawke playing that children's game, or Kim Beazley, or even Simon Crean, Labor leaders of substance? What a silly child performance that was. So what happens is, the green bell rings in Scott Morrison's office. He and Greg Hunt see it. Means they've got a few minutes to get down to the chamber. They've got to go all the way down to the chamber, wait for the division to count, leave, walk all the way back to his office. It's probably a 10 to 15 minute interruption from go to woe and back again. 7 times. I mean, seriously, and good on Greg Hunt, by the way, who's always been one of the government's best ministers and very mild-mannered normally, Greg Hunt, but good on him for that press conference and that clip you showed, going through all the briefings he'd given the Labor Party, and that'll no doubt be in the Fairfax Press tomorrow, all of that.
Oh, of course. David Crowe, he's writing right now. He's going, Albo's tricks, I reckon,
Yep. But these stunts that Albo is doing, this discredits you. He should stop this nonsense on an issue of such substance and importance like this to Australia, and he does this. This is just a silly game.
Why huff and puff about that, Nicholas? Fair dinkum. I mean, you know what the meeting is. The Prime Minister tells the opposition leader what the meeting is, yet still they go and bugger eyes around anyway.
Well, I mean, Michael Kroger says, could you imagine Bob Hawke or Kim Beazley doing that? Well, look, we don't actually have to go back that far to imagine that being done, because I can well remember the Tony Abbott opposition doing that many times, refusing to offer pairs. Even one time I remember them refusing to offer a pair when someone from the Labor side had to go to a funeral. Now, I don't remember...
Well, Nicholas, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? No, guess what? That was wrong. Sorry, mate, is your name on the door? Is your name on the door that you host the show?
But I've only been speaking for 5 seconds.
Well, I repeat. No, I'm saying that was wrong. What Abbott was wrong.
Yes, and my point was going to be that Scott Morrison was a senior member of the Abbott opposition, and I don't remember him going out and calling out the Abbott opposition for playing politics. So I put it to you, he was crying crocodile tears there today when he claimed about the opposition were behaving badly, because he was part of an opposition who did exactly that. So what's wrong is that you're here falling for those crocodile tears, okay?
Nick,
it was political theatre on both sides, and shame on both their sides, I say.
Shame on you, Nick.
So
come on, Bronwyn's Bronwyn knows how the parliament works. You tell her how it is, Bronwyn.
Nicholas.
Disgraceful.
Trump's on top of it. He knows that former socialist governments have, be it Russian or German and now China, have been unable to feed their people. And they've known that they've then enslaved the healthy ones, and then, in the words of the dictates of George Bernard Shaw, they have in fact eliminated the non-productive ones. Then those enslaved workers produce cheap goods. And those cheap goods are then sold to the rest of the world, and they become connected to that line of connection. But the important thing is that Trump knows that while that Chinese government is doing with the coronavirus the sorts of things where we're not getting the facts, he knows that it's a communist regime and it will fail. And he knows that the next step is war. But wait, it's not going to happen again. They don't have to do it yet, because countries like ours buy those cheap slave-produced goods at the expense of our industries. They then buy our country with our money, all the time knowing or not knowing that because of their socialist regime, they will fail themselves.
Well,
but that's
all
a long
that may
way
be
off.
true, Bronwyn,
so
but my question to you
about
is
it.
when...
Say, Nick, not worry about it? Not important?
So Nick, after diverting from my question, wants
Bronwyn,
to divert to you on his question. Let's see how this works. Let's call this, it's called the side pass.
No, my question to Bronwyn is, when she was a member of the Abbott opposition, did she ever cry politics when they refused Labor a leave pass so members of the Labor government could attend funerals? Did she cry? Did she go public and say, that's politics, I'm going to stand up against that on my side of politics, when
Nicholas,
she had the chance to call it out?
The discussions going on today were about solving the disease problem, which has the potential to cause lots of funerals. And to make that comparison is, quite frankly, cheap.
This is the thing. I mean, Nick, you know, look, I get you got a bat for a side here, Nick. But Michael, the point that I'm trying to say here is that I get it. All right, like when there's only a majority of one, you pick your moments, you push your pressure. I get all of that. But when they tell you up front what the meeting's about, and then when he pretends that we never got any briefings, well, he was offered one at 7:30 last night. Instead, there was a better photo op to go to. It gives us an absolute insight into the actual priorities of Albanese as a potential leader, and it's all show pony all the time.
You know, it does, and I'll tell you what wins in federal politics: substance. And if you look at people like Hawke, Fraser, even Howard, even Keating, these childish games were never part of their political manifesto. You've got to stick to substance, because, as Richo says, the mob will work you out. And if you play these cheap sort of political games, people are just disgusted. I mean, there's not a single person watching this show tonight that thinks that what Albo did does any credit, gives him any credit at all. They just think it's appalling. Morrison and Hunt are dealing with potentially an extremely serious problem worldwide.
Correct.
But, you know, it may come to nothing. But
we
so
all hope
far,
that.
what we hope so. But what we know now is potentially an incredibly serious problem. And on 7 occasions, the Prime Minister and the Health Minister are pulled out of a meeting. What a ridiculous thing for Albo to do. It brings great discredit on him. And all you need to do, by the way, Paul, is chalk up 2 or 3 of these, you know, games, schoolyard, you know, bully games, and the electorate will turn on you very quickly. He ought to not try this trick again, because this will bring huge, you know, acrimony on him for today. And if he does this type of thing again, boy, the electorate's going to go right off him.
I agree, but they've got to hear about it. And look, if you want to share this conversation when it's up on our Facebook page, but good luck. This is going to be the only. Oh, of course. You can imagine the Guardian will be absolutely forensic about this, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry I don't share outrage on this one because, again, I can remember when the Tony Abbott opposition refused to offer pairs so that Labor MPs could go to funerals of family members.
What was happening in the chamber today?
I don't remember Michael Kroger decrying that. I don't remember you decrying it, Paul. I used to sit in my office in the PMO and watch you in the evenings. You'll be pleased to know.
Good boy.
I don't remember you ever going too hard on Tony Abbott back then, but tonight it's a crime against humanity because the Albanese opposition does what oppositions do and create maximum mischief and mayhem in the parliament.
It's just mischief when you're talking about how to deal with a pandemic.
Well, the problem was today, it was a tactic.
I agree.
It was a tactic. Because he's come out with his policy about having to have zero emissions by the year 2050. He doesn't want to be talking about or questioned about the sort of costs that might be involved that can be done by asking ministers questions. So he puts up this as a divertissement.